So for today, I had originally planned to give you guys a video just talking about how to optimize carrier aircraft. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to talk about what not to do with carrier aircraft, and I'm just going to let this naval battle speak for itself. We're going to have the French fleet and the British fleet engage each other in the English Channel with the AI turned off, and I want you to see if you can notice something wrong. Okay, we're fighting, and let's see. Okay, we lost 59 CV NAVs, while 160 carrier fighters were shooting down naval bombers. Okay, we only had CV NAVs on the aircraft carriers. What kind of CV NAVs did we have on the aircraft carriers? We had these kinds of CV NAVs. I want you to notice how much air attack these CV NAVs had. Now we're going to go look at England / Britain. These were the carrier fighters they had on their carriers. Do you notice the problem? Ah, yes. It's CV NAVs didn't shoot back despite having all the guns in the world. That's the problem. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Counterfactual Gaming, the gaming channel where if there's something historical in a game, we don't do it. Now, before we get started, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to go through that slightly longer than usual introduction. And if you like the content you're seeing here on the channel, go ahead and put a like and a sub on the video. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments down below, and I will try to get back at you. But for today, we're going to be talking about carrier aircraft. Today, we're talking about optimizing carrier aircraft for certain tasks, but we're also going to talk about a new bug that I found. And I don't think anyone else has found this bug. Someone can correct me in the comments if they want to. But I did confirm this bug with Paradox staff on the forum. I've also confirmed it with some other players, and it didn't seem like anyone had actually heard of this bug. So we're going to talk about a bug with carrier aircraft, and then talk about how to optimize carrier aircraft in light of this bug. And there's basically 3 things you should be not doing with your carrier aircraft in light of how this bug works. And these 3 things boil down to 1. Do not put defensive armament on carrier NAVs. Carrier NAVs do not shoot back at enemy planes when they fly from a carrier. They just don't. They don't shoot back. Doesn't matter how many guns they have, they don't shoot back at all. They will never inflict a single loss. So the weight and the cost of adding guns to carrier NAVs is a waste if you're flying them from carriers. Just don't do it. It's a complete waste. 2. Do not add torpedo bombing modules to carrier fighters to try and make them be both carrier NAVs and carrier fighters. It doesn't work like that. This is not a bug. The last thing I mentioned is a bug. Carrier NAVs are supposed to be able to shoot back at carrier fighters if they have defensive armament. They just don't right now. But carrier fighters cannot launch naval strike missions in carrier combat. And that is an intentional design decision on the part of Paradox. And the third thing is, when designing carrier NAVs, you do not need to make them too expensive. You might put some armor modules on them. You might put bomb locks if you want them to be able to provide ground support and ground attack for your invasions, but don't make them too expensive, because, as we're going to see, it is possible to make carrier NAVs that are so expensive, losing them becomes more expensive than losing battleships and carriers. But we're going to go over all that today, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about this bug that I found with carrier fighters. When I say we don't use defensive armament on carrier NAVs, what do I mean? What I mean is this plane. Now, I've done a whole bunch of tests, and I'm going to show you in this video a test using this kind of carrier NAV, but I'm also going to use this as a sort of explanation for it. And yes, I know, this carrier NAV is absurd and ridiculous. You would normally never use this in a war, but this carrier nav has sort of the most firepower I can put on a carrier nav, so that when you see it in the test, you'll understand that the game is bugged, because this much air attack with this much air defense and agility should be able to kill at least a few enemy fighters, and they don't. But when I say defensive armament, what do I mean? Well, for carrier aircraft, when I'm talking about defensive armament, I'm talking about both adding a turret and adding secondary weapons in the wing module slots. Now, when flying from land, and this is important, when flying from land, these modules up here let this plane function in an air superiority role. And when flying from land, this plane can shoot down other planes. But when this plane is put on a carrier, none of these modules that provide air attack function at all. Period. End of story. Now, I did do some tests, and armor modules do seem to increase the survivability of these aircraft. And, of course, the base air defense you would get from having a better airframe also seems to make them more survivable, but they don't shoot back. So this module, this module, this module, and this turret module here are absolutely useless. It is both added weight and added production cost that does nothing when this plane flies from a carrier. And I want you to pay attention, because this plane is the most expensive and toughest carrier nav I could come up with that could still do its job. It's got 2 jet engines. It does have the requisite torpedo module. It's got 3 sets of cannons. It's got a cannon turret. It's got the air-to-ground radar, too, to make it better at bombing ships. And it's got an armor module. This plane is ridiculously expensive, but it should also be able to kill a few enemy planes. Maybe not dominate the skies, but it should be able to protect itself at least somewhat, right? Now, before I show you my test, let me tag to England and show you what England would be using. When I show you the test in question, this is the plane that's going to be flying from the British carriers. This is the Fulmar. It's a 1940 airframe with a bunch of heavy machine guns, a single Tier 3 engine, some drop tanks, and some armor modules. And as you can see, here it has inferior speed, inferior air defense, and inferior air attack to the carrier nav I just showed you. It has slightly better agility, which you would expect because it's not a twin-engine carrier nav. But this plane should take some losses when trying to shoot down the plane that I just showed you. That is what should be happening. Okay? So, in order to prove to you that carrier navs don't shoot back, what I did, I tested this a bunch of different ways. But I created identical fleets for Britain and for France. No admiral, but you can see that I exercised this fleet up. This is not a meta fleet. This is just a fleet that is adequately screened with AA guns on all ships and with enough firepower to, like, have combat last for more than 24 hours. But it's a 4-carrier, 4-battleship fleet with Tier 3 destroyers. I did put dual-purpose guns and AA guns on the destroyers. I do have Tier 3 AA guns and dual-purpose guns on the battleships so that they can also shoot down enemy bombers. We're going to see why that's important in a little bit. And this fleet has 4 carriers. Now, I did not load this fleet up with the maximum number of planes. It's only running half as many planes as it could run. But there are 100%, as you can see, these are all carrier fighters. This fleet has 160 carrier fighters. Now, if we tag over to France, and you can see same fleet, same training, same design, like all that same stuff. The difference is this fleet has 320 of these carrier navs. Planes on both fleets have also been exercised. Those air wings are as good as they're going to be, so they've got like the bonus to air attack and to agility. Night operations will not matter for either of these planes because carrier wings do not fly at night. But they are as good as they can get at peace. And because we've got 320 of these carrier navs on this fleet, we would expect, okay, 160 carrier fighters that have worse stats to the carrier navs, and there's half as many carrier fighters as carrier navs. The carrier navs should at least be able to inflict some damage. Okay, so these fleets are identical. Also, I have put a whole bunch of level 6 radar across the channel. You can see that I've done that. If you look here, you can see that I've put level 6 radar in Britain as well. So the English Channel is covered by really high detection. This is mainly so the fleets will easily be able to find each other. When I did the first run, I forgot to put radar there, and so the fleets were sometimes just sailing right past each other and not seeing each other. But we have all of the detection you could possibly want. We have identical ships on either side. The only thing we are doing in this test is testing aircraft. Now, I've turned off the AI, so the AI won't fiddle with anything. We're going to use the allow Diplo cheat so that Britain can declare war on France. And we're going to order this fleet into the English Channel. Why are you not going in this channel? No admiral. I don't want admirals changing anything. Give them an aggressive posture. Go to France. Same thing. Go into the English Channel under an aggressive posture. Alright, we are at war. AI is turned off. We're going to let this run. Hey, the League of Nations ended again. Okay, the fleets are looking for each other. That's what this is all about. If you didn't know that that's what this little counter is right here. This is the trying to track down the other fleet counter. Okay, we now have a naval battle. It's currently, the weather's clear, but it's at night, so nobody can fly yet. Okay, it's daytime. Carrier navs are flying. Okay. They're getting shot down. They're shooting down planes. Okay, we've lost a bunch of planes. Now, I want you to notice that French carrier navs are, in fact, inflicting significant damage on the British. But I want you to notice something. We still have as many fighters as we started with, as the number of aircraft declines. Look at that. It's slowly going down. Slowly. Okay. The battle is over. What are the losses? Okay. And this happens almost every time. This result is very repeatable in terms of lost aircraft. France lost 76 aircraft. Britain lost a carrier. We bagged Ark Royal this time. And 15 destroyers, while France lost 12 destroyers. The carrier navs inflicted decent damage on opposing ships. But what I want to take a look at is this right here. France lost 40 CV NAVs in air battle. Remember, there's no other aircraft flying here. Turn the AI off. And lost 36 to AA guns. Okay, we're just going to disregard the AA guns. But that's 40 planes lost to air battle. Britain lost no planes to air battle. And you know they didn't lose any planes to air battle because you watched it with me practically live. Those carrier navs did not shoot at the opposing planes. You also look at this. I cheated in like tens of thousands of aircraft so I could run the test multiple times. And you can see that these carrier wings lost XP. Some of them really lost a bunch of XP. They did generate some aces. So they do have aces. Okay, let's go take a look at Britain. Tag to England. And every time I say tag to England, it's because the tag code for the British Empire is ENG. England. So I always say England, even though it's not England. We take a look at the wings on the carriers. Now, Britain lost one carrier. So some of those planes got sent somewhere else. But from the surviving aircraft, you can see that their XP levels went up. They're fine. They didn't lose hardly anything. So defensive armament on carrier navs means absolutely nothing in a carrier battle. Now, if you want to fly them from land, if you're going to do some kind of hybrid strategy where you just build like a ton of carrier aircraft and you base them on land, that's something different. But do not put defensive armament on your carrier navs while they are flying from carriers. It is a waste of time. It is a waste of production costs. And let's talk about how much of a production cost am I wasting doing that. If I go here and I just rip out all the defensive armament that I put on this aircraft, look at the production costs. It went down by a ton. And I can do things like swap in extra armor plates. Now, some of you are thinking to yourself, oh, put more nav stuff on there. But light airframes can only take one torpedo mounting. And if I put like a bomb lock on there, the bomb locks do nothing to increase naval striking power. They only give you the option to bomb from land. So, yeah, you can only have one there. You can only make carrier navs so navy before, like, the game stops you from doing that, which will come up in point 3 when I talk about the other thing we can do to optimize carrier aircraft. But all those guns, just throw it away. Don't need those anymore. Heck, I can even go down to 1 engine now. That's going to cut the production cost of this aircraft a whole bunch. Yeah, I don't even need that anymore. Heck, I can cut the production cost of this down to... Hey, can we do... Oh, we can make it cheap. Can we go to cheap? Oh, look at that. I can keep going cheaper and cheaper. Okay, that's quite not... Okay, tier 2 engines isn't good enough. But as you can see, if I optimize my carrier navs to be good at just shooting at ships and ignore self-defense, they will be much cheaper. So don't do it. Don't waste your time. I did post a bug report at Paradox. So Paradox is aware that this is a bug, but until the bug is fixed, because I'm not even sure they know where the bug in the code is, it's not something it defines, I don't think. Do not put defensive armament on your carrier aircraft. Just don't do it. Okay, point number 2. Designing carrier fighters. Now, we just ran through a test where I was using very fighter-oriented fighters to shoot down carrier navs. And some of you, if you're familiar with my content, you know that when I face the AI, I really like multi-role aircraft, because once I've obliterated the enemy air force, I don't want 3,000 fighters just sitting around with nothing constructive to do when they could have bomb locks or rocket rails or something that lets them switch to ground attack and logistics strike. With carrier fighters, that is not something you should do. I'm going to show you what I mean. We're going to duplicate this, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a torpedo mounting on it. Okay, now this is, I'm not going to call this Fulmar Mark 1, we're going to call this multi-role Fulmar. Okay, now multi-role Fulmar, we're also going to change its little stupid icon so that I can, by sight recognition, see what the heck it is. Okay. Now, this is something you need to know about carrier aircraft. This module slot, this first module slot determines whether a plane is a carrier fighter or a carrier nav. If you put machine guns or some sort of air superiority weapon in the first slot, the game designates this as a carrier fighter. And once you've designated something as a carrier fighter, it cannot run naval strike when in carrier combat. If you have it from a land base, yes, it can run naval strike from a land base. If you manually select naval strike in a neighboring air region, which some players do from their carriers, yes, it can run naval strike. But in carrier combat, like I just showed you and I'm about to show you, this torpedo module does nothing. It will not matter. So I've got the multi-role Fulmar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ALE cheat to give me 10,000 of them. I'm going to turn off the AI. We're going to turn on the instant construction cheat. We're going to turn on allow Diplo so I can declare war. If I could type correctly, I will allow Diplo so I can declare war. Okay. I'm going to delete all these planes. And what I'm going to do instead is put multi-role Fulmars on each aircraft carrier. Now, I'm not going to waste everyone's time training these up, because the whole point of this exercise is going to be to see if they can actually naval strike while they are operating from a carrier, and we're going to see that they can't. So, I have 320 multi-role Fulmars on this carrier group. So this carrier is going to go into the English Channel, just like we did before, engage at high risk. I'm going to tag to France, and for the purposes of this test, I'm just going to delete all the carrier aircraft on the French fleet, so that there's no weirdness. Okay. We're going to send them to go patrol in the Channel at high risk, declare war on Britain. Alright. We're going to roll. Okay. They are now, the Fulmars, there's no enemy aircraft opposition. There's no enemies flying over the Channel. Those Fulmars have nothing to shoot at as fighters. Will they bomb enemy ships? They are doing nothing. They did nothing. That was purely a surface battle. And in this case, it looks like wow, the British did bad in that surface battle. That was terrible. 54 destroyers and the loss of Prince of Wales? Jeez, that was horrible. But, as you can see, there were no losses to aircraft. The aircraft didn't do anything. So, when we are talking about carrier aircraft, do not design carrier aircraft that are fighters. Don't waste your time putting torpedo modules on them, because they will not multi-role perform. Once they are a carrier fighter and they are on a carrier deck and they are in a naval combat with carriers, they just act like fighters. They will never, ever, 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 ever perform naval strike in carrier combat on their own. I could order them to do a manual naval strike, like I said before. I can say, hey guys, can we do, I can try to order them. Hold on. The carrier needs to be... Put the carrier out to sea. I can order them to do naval strike manually, but that isn't the same as we're in carrier combat and we're doing carrier stuff. Don't do it. So, if carrier navs aren't shooting back in carrier combat, and carrier fighters cannot multi-role when in carrier combat, what should we do with carrier navs? How do we design them? Well, this won't be a surprise if you've been paying attention to the video, but I want to sort of cover all the bases here. And I originally had a slightly different take on this, but I did talk to some friends of mine that I play multiplayer with, and they pointed out that there were some holes in my initial analysis of this. So I'm going to incorporate, this is mostly my idea, but I am incorporating some things that some friends of mine talked to me about. First things first. This is a waste of cost, as we talked about. So if this is a waste of cost, what should we do with our carrier navs? Well, we're going to start with the worst CV nav ever, though it's not actually the worst. And here's what I mean by starting with the worst CV nav ever. This plane has a single torpedo module, a single Tier 1 engine, that's the cheapest, worst engine, and it is using the special non-strategic materials usage module to lower its cost further at the cost of air defense. Why am I showing you this? Well, this is because this is not actually the worst carrier nav ever. This is actually one of the most cost-efficient carrier navs ever. Let me explain why. Carrier navs, since they aren't shooting back right now, so there's no point in putting defensive armament on them. And you can't double up on torpedo modules. You can't make them better at naval strike than this one simple module here. Now, you could put the guided anti-ship missile when you get that technology, but that doesn't change the fact that you can only mount one or the other. You can't mount both. You can't mount more than one. So you're limited in how much firepower you can bring to bear. Furthermore, range doesn't matter for carrier aircraft when they are in carrier combat. Those carrier combats I've been showing you, where the planes are automatically in the combat window with the ships, range doesn't matter there. So, I could have an airframe with a range of 1,500 kilometers, or I could use the interwar airframe with a range of 450 kilometers, and it doesn't matter in carrier combat. It also means I don't need to add things like drop tanks or extra fuel tanks, because that range doesn't matter in carrier combat. So if the only thing I care about, this is important, if the only thing I care about is carrier combat, then I need my requisite naval striking module with either torpedo or a guided anti-ship missile, and that's it. At a production cost of 22, this plane is affordable and easy to produce, and it will do the job. Now, having said that, defensive modules and the air defense stat do matter when trying to survive enemy fighters. However, if you were paying attention earlier, you noticed that even with the highest possible stats I could put on those planes, the best CV nav ever, we were still losing a significant number of planes to enemy fire from enemy fighters. So when we're talking about survivability here, it may not be worth your time to stack a whole bunch of defensive modules on this aircraft. And remember, counterfactual's golden rule of air design: there is no module in a plane that improves survivability against ship AA or any anti-aircraft guns. So if there are no modules that make your aircraft more survivable against AA guns, and you're going to lose a lot of planes to AA guns, it pays to make your carrier navs cheaper. There's no point in making them super expensive. So I've designed this plane as my super cheap plane, and what's funny about this plane is it doesn't cost any aluminum. It only costs 1 point of rubber to build. That may not matter to a lot of players, but if you watched my stream earlier this week when I was stunlocking the IJN and I'm trying to build aircraft and nobody will sell me aluminum as the US, suddenly an aircraft that costs 0 aluminum is a lot more attractive. Now, having said that, we do need to talk about supporting troops from carriers. Some players like to have carrier navs that can also bomb troops via ground attack. If you are one of those players, you will want to design your plane differently. You're going to want to add either drop tanks or outright extra fuel tanks. Drop tanks are probably a better choice. And you're going to want to add bomb locks or rocket rails. And that will give you some ground attack capabilities. It's not going to give you a whole lot of ground attack capability, but it'll give you at least some range so you can get some mission efficiency. But that doesn't raise the cost too much. It puts us to 24. But what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't design this plane and just swap in like an extra bomb locks module or something, because this is still way too expensive. And what I also wouldn't do is use this super expensive modern airframe with jet engines and all kinds of stuff like that. Like, don't make it super expensive. That is a waste of your time. I can't think of a reason to even add jet engines to this plane because it's still way too much thrust. So I could just put this on here. Maybe we'll add drop tanks to give it some range. Oh, no, even that's too much range. Look at that. That's way too much range. We don't need that. So even if I'm using the modern airframe, which is going to cost me a whole lot more than this plane right up here, I rip all the stuff out of it. You know what? We're going to swap to a worse engine. How about, will this help? Can I do that? Nope. I still need a tier 3 engine. Okay, we can do a tier 3 engine. We can make the plane significantly cheaper, but even this might be too expensive for a carrier aircraft. Why do I say that? Why am I saying that that could be too expensive? Well, you remember how I showed you how many planes were being lost to enemy fire. We're going to go back to the autosave, and I want to talk about cost for a second. First of all, we lose a lot of carrier aircraft to AA, so survivability, again, in terms of modules, I can't make those numbers better. by making planes more expensive. That's a lot of planes to lose. But here, we're going to run this naval battle. And I want to show you something. Okay. Here, we're going to order you to... Here, go back home. We're going to order that fleet back home. And I want to talk about what it costs to repair a ship. Okay. That is not the right ship. What we're going to do is we're going to detach Prince of Wales into its own group. We're going to send Prince of Wales to Plymouth for repair. And we're going to take a look at how long it's going to take to repair Prince of Wales. Okay, Prince of Wales is going to take 8.4 months to repair. That is a long time. But I want you to understand what the cost is. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to cheat in some industrial text using the research cheat. Let me go grab that research cheat real fast. I hate typing out the research on icon click one. Okay. So we're going to grab industrial text because I want to show you some math. And I don't want there to be any question about what I'm talking about here. Okay. And I'm going to implement, we're just going to build a convoy. We're going to look at what does one dock do. Okay. At high tech levels, one dock, and you'll notice that as soon as I really improve my tech levels, you'll notice that Prince of Wales is going to repair much faster now. But that's because naval factories are more expensive. It's easier to do the math this way. So, Prince of Wales is going to take 5.8 months to repair. Each dockyard produces 2.5 construction a day on whatever project they are assigned. New ship, repair, whatever. So that's 2.5 production points spent per day. Now, 5.8 months, we'll say 5.8 times 30 for 30 days. We're going to say Prince of Wales is going to take 174 days to repair. 174 days times 2.5 is 435 construction points required to repair Prince of Wales. But that's 435 construction points. Now, 435 construction points, how many aircraft does that equal? Well, if we use worst carrier nav ever, which costs 22.20, that equals roughly 19.59 carrier navs worth of damage. This is something you need to understand. This is the cheapest carrier nav I can make, and even having bombed Prince of Wales pretty badly, it cost only 19 to 20 of these equivalents to repair Prince of Wales. Now, what if Prince of Wales had been sunk? What if we had sunk Prince of Wales with an aircraft? Prince of Wales, as I've designed it in this game, again, these are not meant to be meta ships. These are just ships I designed for the test. Prince of Wales, as it's designed in this case, is 13,718. And if we calculate that, this ship is equivalent to 617 of the worst carrier navs. Okay, if we manage to sink it, that's actually a pretty good return on investment. But what does that return on investment look like if I go back and let's take a look at France? And if I go and take a look at best carrier nav ever, and that's 95, how does it compare to battleship costs there? Well, 13,000 divided by, if I make super expensive carrier navs, now that battleship costs as much as 144 of these super expensive, pointless carrier navs. Now, obviously, again, we know that this is a bad design because it's got defensive armament. But I want you to understand that you can make aircraft that are so expensive that it is a waste of time to use them to sink ships, because the ships themselves are going to cost less overall than the planes you are throwing against them. So, when we are designing carrier aircraft, we're going to go back and take a look at it again. The higher this number gets, the less efficient it is to use them. You want to keep this number low, because there's no reason to have super expensive carrier navs. If you want to tweak them to support invasions by giving them bomb locks, that's fine. If you want to tweak them to make them a little more survivable in air combat, swapping out the modules for some more air defense, that's fine. But in terms of flying from a carrier in carrier combat, if that's the only thing you care about, this is what you should be doing with your carrier navs, because increasing the cost of them too much makes them too expensive to use in their intended role of sinking ships. And you already saw me do it a couple of times where, we're losing 100, 200 carrier planes in every carrier battle, which is fine. I mean, that happened historically. That is, you go back and read about battles like Midway and stuff, there were massacres of carrier aircraft, even when they sank a bunch of enemy ships. But you don't want to make those carrier aircraft ridiculously expensive so that it is more expensive to lose the aircraft than it is to sink the ship. That about wraps up the video. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching my content. And for some inexplicable reason, it's raining and thundering where I live. I can't seem to ever record or edit videos on days when the weather is good. But I hope the weather is better where you are, and I hope that you are having a pleasant day.